So now we are now recording, and wanted to welcome everyone to the Economic Development Commission meeting of March 9th for Stonington, Connecticut. And we will Ms. Virginia back on. So the first thing we'll do is have a roll call, and I will go down my list of, if I find my list. Sorry. I'm going to go down my list, and if you're here, just say here. So Dave Hammond, I'm the chair of the EDC. I'm here. Kevin Bowdler.
I'm here.
Jim Lathrop.
Here.
Suzanne Lane. Okay, Suzanne's not here yet. Rich Balistraki. No Rich. Dan McFadden. Dan can't make it. Bill Hobbs. Nope. Virginia Abernathy.
Present.
Yep, Virginia's here. Pete Robinson cannot make it. John Godin.
I am here.
Chris Donahue. And not here. And Colin Hagan.
Here.
Very good. So we have a quorum. We need 5 members, and we have 5. So we're going to get started with that. And I guess the first off the top is I'm going to exit the meeting at 7 o'clock because Wynn has a basketball game. And so I'm with no offense to the rest of the EDC, I have prioritized that. So I'll go from a WebEx meeting to a NFHS live stream Zoom video of the basketball game up in Ledyard. The first thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes from February 9th. So at that meeting, we pretty much just spent the time reviewing our projects. And were there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
I move to accept the minutes as is.
And that was
John. Yep.
Is there a second?
Kevin Bowdler will second that motion.
And any other discussion? All right, hearing none, the minutes will pass to file, and thank you very much. So we'll move into the main program, and the first item on the agenda was we have our friends from Sector, which is the Southeastern Connecticut Enterprise Region organization. So it's a nonprofit that is a regional economic development operation. We don't have a county government per se in Connecticut and in New London. So this organization acts where you might see economic development entities act on a county level, combining regional efforts. So I've been on the board of Sector for I don't know, quite a few years now, and have participated in their economic development committee and got to know the members and the staff there very well. And they are a resource for all towns and communities. And so periodically we like to invite Sector in to come and talk to us about what some of their support services are, and just to keep the relationship fresh and ongoing. So with that, we have a number of members. Nancy, I'm going to let Nancy Kauser start, and she's the director of Sector, and maybe you can introduce your team so I don't screw anything up.
Sure. So, excuse me. I'm Nancy Kauser. I'm the executive director of Sector. I've been here for 4 years and have had the great pleasure of actually knowing and working with a lot of you, but especially with Dave. I'm both our board and economic development committee. I have with me here today Melinda Wilson, who is our Assistant Director of Economic Development Agency, EDA, which is a Department of Commerce division programs. And that means that she supports economic development, and she also works on our small business lending program. I also have with me, I think she just joined, Judith Lamson Rockwell, who is our Small Business Development Center counselor. So we were very lucky in June to execute a subcontract with SBDC. And we have a counselor specific for our region in our office, and that's Judith. She's been a great addition. And I have Sherry Cody with us too, who is a new staff member to us, not new to the region because she was previously a vice president at the Chamber of Commerce of Eastern Connecticut, but is new to sector as our regional economic development manager. And her role is to help particularly municipalities in regional recovery efforts. So we're thrilled to have her here. And not with us, but additional resources to you are Annie Chambers, who is our small business lending director, and Frank Dixon, who is our Procurement Technical Assistance Center Director. I think we have a PowerPoint that we can go through that has their contact information on it, and we'll get that to Dave after the meeting. So Sherry is sharing content, and thank you, Sherry. So next slide, please. Can I drive? Oh, okay. So I'll just start quickly with what sector's role is. So as Dave mentioned, we're the region's economic development organization. We were recognized as such in 2013 federally by EDA, Economic Development Agency, and through the state by the Office of Policy and Management and the Department of Economic and Community Development. And our region matches the region of the Council of Governments, the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments, and they're a very close partner of ours. Our main role and duty to EDA as the Economic Development Organization is to coordinate, write, and implement the region's Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS, which is basically a strategic plan for the region regarding economic development. It's a 5-year plan. We wrote our first one in 2002, our most recent in 2017. Our next one is due 2022, which sounds like a long time from now, but it's not. And our most recent CEDS was a best practice model nationally by the National Association of Development Organizations. Why is the CEDS important? EDA is the primary federal funder of economic development activities nationally, and that includes infrastructure, technical assistance, university grants, innovation grants, things like that. A region cannot qualify for EDA funding unless they have a CEDS, and a project cannot go before EDA for funding unless sector has provided technical assistance and recommends the project. So we are kind of like the linchpin in the region for economic development efforts. Why is that important to a community like Stonington, which actually supports sector with municipal contributions? Our only requirement from EDA is to just write a letter of support for a project and to kind of go over the application. But for our municipal members, we actually handhold throughout the whole process. So for Stonington, for example, we're working with your first select woman on a project regarding the town docks and potential infrastructure project on 2 docks that require infrastructure improvements. And we've spent a lot of time working on potential outlines for the project, coordinating calls with EDA, to see if they have an appetite for the project, and if so, how should we structure it? And we will continue to do that. It's one of the roles we provide for free for member municipalities. We've also talked very much with Dave about potential other projects, and one of them that we've identified is, your kind of golden triangle off exit 90, or you call it a bronze triangle. Sorry about that. It's my son. He probably can't find his socks. EDA has notified us on the sly that there will be more funding coming to them through the recent bill that President Biden was able to get passed. And there's going to be a special focus on things like tourism, on those areas of the economy that have been especially damaged. So there's a potential to do an infrastructure project or do something along that area. And I lived in Stonington for years, so I know that that's been a top priority for a long time. But we'll help Dave and his team identify if there is a project there that we can help steward through EDA. In addition to the EDA role for our member municipalities, we provide a lot of project data. So we did that for the Campbell Grain building. We worked really hard with that team to provide them with lots of data for their business planning purposes and their grant purposes. And we also worked with Congressman Courtney's office to help identify some gap funding that they needed to take care of. So again, those are those kind of that added on other duties as assigned projects that we provide to our member municipalities. I think, and site finding, that's the other thing. We have posted properties on Advanced CT's Site Finder platform for our member municipalities, and we've acted as the point of contact so that we only pass on those properties that might be of interest, or those people that might be of interest. What we're doing next is we're working hard on regional marketing. So we received some money from EDA that will help us do things like provide some business education and outreach, and we've done that, some of that already. We did a region-wide training on foreign trade zones. Dave, I think you were there for that one. Foreign trade zones have a regional impact now, and we really want to help businesses understand what it's about and how to get the support to partake in that if they are importers or exporters. We'll be doing more of those. We're also going to be working on a regional marketing prospectus that will be available to our member municipalities to market our region. And that'll be both available hard copy and a digital format, an interactive digital format. And to prepare for that, we are going to be studying the way people consume information about our region. What do they look for when they come to our region? What words steer click-throughs? What aren't they looking for that they should be? And we'll be sharing that marketing information with our member municipalities as we unearth it. So next slide. Melinda, do you want to take the small business lending slide? And please stop me at any time if you have questions, because I'll talk forever.
Disclaimer, this will be the first time I've done this, so bear with me. I'm excited that it's you as a group to hear this. Thank you. Sector small business lending is mainly based on Economic Development Administration grant funding. We use as revolving loan funds. We've done this in the region since the 80s. When there's an economic hardship in an area, EDA often funds recovery funding, as they have done for post-pandemic. We have 2 revolving loan funds that started out with deficits in commercial fishing, and another after the big EB layoffs, where sector's focus was sort of rehoming those technically skilled employees into other technical careers. As workforce development is a big part of what is going on in our region now. These are ways that EDA was able to help, through the decades, actually. So as community development lender, our goals are to support the SEDS through lending and promote job growth and job retention and job growth, but also to increase overall wealth in the region. So wise investing can do that. And oftentimes the non-traditional piece of our lending comes into play when there's as Nancy mentioned earlier, we weren't able to lend in this situation, but Campbell Grain, that project had gaps between what traditional lenders can do to fully fund a project. Sector can come in and take a little bit more risk out of a project. Our underwriting standards can be a little more flexible, where there are certain, banks are very, very regulated often, and certain credit scores can't work or low down payments can't work. We are able to come in and take enough of the risk out of some of these projects for banks to make the deal work. So that's our ultimate goal, is to make the deal work, because so often these are the drivers in our community. The small businesses really are the drivers in our community, and that's what we're trying to do.
This is Kevin here. Can I just ask a quick question?
Please.
So are you actually making a loan which is supplemental to maybe some other financing that these businesses are looking for, or are you maybe giving a grant which helps them then get a loan or more financing from wherever else they're looking to get funding?
That's a great question. Through our economic development arm, we may be able to ascertain if there's grant funding available. Sometimes DECD through the state will offer, grants for large pieces of equipment or things like that. But our small business lending program is exactly as you described it. We make loans. We expect our loans to be repaid. But the beauty of it is that the loans and any of the interest that isn't used to specifically run the program is reinvested back in the fund and lent again. So it's constantly growing and it's constantly reinvesting in the region.
So,
Thanks, Belinda. To add to that, if I could just, I'm sorry, Belinda, add to that, because we're a community lender and not necessarily profit-based, we do a lot, especially right now, of reworks on loans. We have quite a number of loans that can't repay right now because of COVID. And we're able to utilize some of our unrestricted funding streams to help people defer principal or rework their loan over a longer term so that their payments are lower. Fully half of our lending portfolio at any given time during COVID has been under that type of work. So we're much more flexible than a traditional bank. And our funding can be anything like, traditional manufacturer. We funded the original ice machine for the Stonington fishing fleet. We did the Niantic oysters for a while, at farms. So it's everything from traditional businesses that banks understand to those that banks don't understand, or credit problems, or a fairly new business that doesn't have the forecasts or the history yet that banks trust.
Kevin, do you mind if I ask a question? I don't want to interrupt you. So Melinda, who is your funding source? Is it the government is your funding source? Is it private organizations that are depositing funds and that are donating funds to this revolving loan facility?
So the majority of the funding does come from EDA, federal, Department of Commerce. In the past, it's come and we have a new fund that is 1.76 million EDA.
Okay. So you have your own credit committee, you have your own credit officers, you have your own workout team. You basically function as a bank. There is a moral obligation on the part of the borrower to repay that loan. Once that loan is repaid, you can then reinvest it back into the community. Is that correct?
That is fantastic. Nancy,
you're hired.
Write that down. You just said it perfectly.
No, I was familiar
exactly
with.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was familiar with an organization like this in Bridgeport, and it really is a godsend for that area where you're trying to lend in communities that typically a bank will shy away from. Okay. Thank you.
We also have our own funds, John. So we have about 6 million of our own money that we can lend out. So it's a combination of a number of sources, but you're right. The main chunk is federal. I'm sorry, Melinda, go ahead. Yeah.
No, that's fine.
What's the total size of your current loan book or funds available for lending?
Oh, geez, we have about 8 million available right now.
Okay, and how much is actually out on loan at the moment?
Probably about the same, Melinda.
I think what's out in the community is in the high fives, close to 6 million, and we have another depending on the day, 2.5 million or so to lend.
Yeah. And we also wrote loans for DECD, the Small Business Express program, and we still service those. So that's another $6 or $7 million worth of loans that we're servicing for DECD.
Yeah.
So you may actually do loans that even the SBA type lending facilities wouldn't typically do, because you're willing to take on the risk for the underlying story of the business and the individuals that are operating the business. Okay, this
Yes,
is great.
exactly.
This is
Yep,
great.
exactly.
Thank you.
Yep, character and regional influence have a lot to do with this. Yep.
Got it.
I wanted to make just a couple more quick points. You brought up something very important about the people that we serve and the folks that we hope to serve. And one of the things that we really want to be doing is making sure that we're reaching out to the marginalized communities. To non-traditional lending can be just that we can reach out to communities that aren't necessarily being reached out to at this point. The last point in this slide has actually been updated. EDA has awarded us approval to lend in the Northeast Connecticut COG region. So our lending area actually is Northeastern and Southeastern Connecticut at this point. Any more questions, please let me know. Thanks.
Great job. See, great job for the first time. Thank you. Awesome. Sherry, can we have the next slide, please? I'll cover this one. Frank Dixon, who is our Procurement Technical Assistance Center Director, wasn't available tonight. But this is actually a statewide program. So Sector runs this program for the entire state. We have offices, 5 different offices across the state. It's no charge. And we help small businesses who want to sell their services and or products to the government, whether it's local, state, or federal, or be the subcontractor to a prime contractor. So a lot of our clients are subcontractors to Electric Boat, for example. What does that mean? That means that we can help them get the necessary registrations, SAM registration, women-owned business certification, veteran-owned business certification. We help them write what's called a capability statement, which is basically proving that they can do what they're bidding on. We help them to find bids. Last year, this project, we worked with close to 600 clients, and they secured over $200 million in government contracts, which represents about $13 to $14 million in tax revenue for the state. This is a $700,000 program, so it's a really, really incredible project. We do have a dedicated counselor in Groton who is dedicated to our region, but it is a vitally important project, and many small businesses don't realize that the government buys everything. We have businesses that sell chocolate. We have businesses that sell T-shirts, that sell scooters, as well as the traditional manufacturers. So the only caveat to that is that many small businesses who want to sell to the government think that the government's going to save them because they're not doing well. Generally, you have to prove a good work history and a good product history in order to be able to sell to the government. You basically have to prove to them that you can do the work before they'll hire you. So that's PTAC. Any questions on that? No? All right, Sherry, next slide. All right, and with that, I mentioned that we were fortunate to secure a contract with the SBDC to have our own counselor. We found the best one in the state. That's Judith Lamson Rockwell, and I'll turn it over to Judith to talk a little bit about what she does.
Hi, everybody. Good to see everyone tonight. And yes, as Nancy mentioned, everyone can hear me okay. Is that true? Okay, yes. Good. So I'm the small business development counselor, and I work within Sector and work one-on-one with businesses to have startups, expansions, whatever challenge a business might have. I'm no cost to the business, and I'm pretty much goal driven. So whatever the business is looking to do, I help them get there. And it's through a series of one-on-one appointments. Right now it's through Zoom or phone call, but it could also be Meetup. And we define the goals that the business is trying to achieve and develop a plan to get there. So there's really no limit to what I can handle with a business. If it's something that I'm not capable of working with on my own, then I reach out to a fellow counselor and we collaborate on the business and help them to get to the next level. So it's pretty exciting work and I enjoy doing it.
And I'll just add to Judith, because she's doesn't tout her own horn enough. She's very instrumental in helping small businesses get things like PPP, the payroll protection program, loans and grants, EIDL, the Women's Business Development Center grants, Norwich grants, So she really, really helps businesses secure whatever funding is available to them, especially in this COVID environment.
So if we were, as an EDC doing outreach to local businesses in Stonington, we could, and they said, we're having trouble keeping our head above water, we could use some help. We could direct them to you guys.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So Judith, would it be fair to say that you're a bit like a coach?
A lot like a coach. Yes, most definitely. Sometimes businesses just need to sound out an idea, or sometimes they need to build momentum. But it is a lot of coaching. Just sometimes it's defining, okay, you did really well with this, or setting up steps. Sometimes in a startup, especially, a business owner doesn't really know how to begin, or, what do I need to get? This is what I'd like to do. How do I get there? So it's a lot like being a coach. Yes.
And the finding capital bullet point there, can you just talk a bit more about what the different types of capital and sources might be that you could help people with?
Yeah, so recently, as Nancy had mentioned, I've been working with PPP, EIDL, some grants, Norwich grant. I have some clients that have applied for that, as well as the Women's Development grant that I think was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I collaborate with our team on the in-house lending. So there's different businesses that would be a good candidate to have lending through our in-house team. So we work together on getting these deals.
Do you work with the SBA?
I didn't hear you.
Do you work with the SBA?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Do you
We also, I'm sorry, when available, we also try to find venture capital. As you know, that's pretty hard to find in this region. As an aside, we are working with an organization called TechCon to revitalize their venture capital funds. It is hard to find in our region, but we do try to find that as well.
Judith, do you do any work with some of the SCORE chapters in this area? It's based out of Old Saybrook, I think, is where they are.
I haven't had the opportunity yet, but it would not be a problem to refer. If someone needed the help that SCORE provides, then I would certainly do a referral. Personally, I have used SCORE in my history and have found them to be extremely valuable. I've used them on several occasions.
Yeah, I think the difference between what you do is you have more of a capital raise bent as well, and SCORE is more of a consulting bent as far as setting a business up or getting or helping turn it around. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
It's a great question. We do have a SCORE counselor on our loan administration board. So we do have that connection. We do every week what we call team huddles to try to figure out, for every client that we're working with, what resources can we wrap around them? And so they're definitely available to us. Thank you. Great job, Judith.
Thanks.
All right, next slide. And I think this is our last one, actually, and I'll turn this over to Sherry, because we were so fortunate to receive some more funding from EDA for recovery work, and that's what allowed us to bring Sherry on board. And Sherry, I'll let you talk through some of the work that you're doing. Nope.
So sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself when I'm sharing a screen. I told you I'm not that familiar with this platform, so I have no idea what I'm doing right now. Hold on one second while I see if I can get you all back on my screen. This is so crazy. All right, well, I can't see any of you, but can you hear me? Can you see me?
We sure can, Sherry.
Okay.
We can't see your screen, but it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry. Technology is not my friend tonight, apparently. But as Nancy mentioned, my position is new to the organization via the EDA and a wonderful grant that they were able to receive. And really, my job is to help the region with recovery after COVID. What does that look like? We don't know yet in terms of, the region recovering, but I am on board full time to help. And so with all of our municipalities, I am to, find out what the struggles are and how sector can help. And so I've been making the rounds, as Dave knows, making phone calls, meeting with our municipalities to ask those questions. And so some of the work that we've done in the last few months since I've been on board, one of the things Nancy mentioned was doing a foreign trade zone webinar for New London. They were able to expand the trade zone to cover all of southeastern Connecticut, and wanted to get that word out into the community. So we facilitated a webinar for them a couple weeks ago. They were so happy with that they asked if we could do another one, and this time really promoting Site Finder as a tool for municipalities. So we will be organizing a Site Finder webinar with Advanced CT to educate our municipalities and our commercial realtors. And so just a little tidbit for you. Did you know that Advanced CT is now offering municipalities free service to list all of your properties on Site Finder for free? That was something that you had to pay for before. But now they're allowing municipalities to list all of your town-owned properties for free and up to 5 private properties at no charge. So we want to make sure we get the word out to the realtors and to our towns and cities to make sure that you all know about that. A couple of other things that Nancy has talked about, we have been looped into your subcommittee to work with the Exit 90 triangle. So we're looking forward to helping as best as we can on that. In terms of Eda Grant Funding, and Nancy has spoken about our efforts to help, get that funding for our towns and others. We're working in Wyndham with a kitchen incubator. We're working with the City of New London on an Eda grant, potentially, the Eastern Chamber of Commerce. Nancy mentioned Danielle here in Stonington, and then also with Waterford, we're trying to help them out with the Crystal Mall. So that's, I've been on board for, I think, 3 months now. And so that, that's where we are now, but we have a lot more work to do. And I think that it'll evolve, as we go through the recovery process, or recovery from COVID.
I think that's all we had. So any questions?
Gary, can you just talk a bit more about the advanced? Is this like the LoopNet? Who owns? I can't remember the name of it. Owns LoopNet, but it used to cost like $5,000 a year to have access to it, and it's really the only place where you can get a good idea of what properties were for sale.
Yeah, so there are a few different softwares or platforms that commercial realtors will post their sites, and Advanced CT has gotten behind Site Finder, and they really want there to be one resource so that it's easier for developers to find the right property. And so Site Finder is the one that they've invested in, and they're just trying to get as many commercial realtors and towns and cities to use that one platform. So we're happy to have you come and watch a webinar when we do that with Advanced CT and learn more about it.
I think, Kevin, you're referring to CoStar. Yes, and we've been looking at that. It's not terribly accurate in our region, but we are looking at it.
Good, thank you.
CoStar is only accurate when you have a lot of like properties around.
Correct.
You don't have the density in southeastern Connecticut.
Yeah, thanks for that input. You're exactly right.
You probably know that one of our projects we'll look at is called Stuck Property Analysis. So we've got some properties which have just sort of sat there, a bit like the Campbell for many, many years. So we wanted to sort of do an exercise to first of all identify what those properties are. Obviously, reach out then to their owners to see what. Now, sometimes there's a whole stack of reasons, whether it's environmental or other things, but to understand, is there something that we could do to help get those sites redeveloped somehow?
So we would certainly be more than happy to help with that process. I think we've it's really, the economic development is like other duties as assigned, for our municipal members. It's, what are you working on? What resources could we bring to the table? Maybe it's data, maybe it's a network to someone at DECD that might know of something. We recently were trying to help somebody who wants to build a sports complex connect with the Mohegan Tribe and DECD. So it's really, Dave has asked us to really join in on as many projects as possible. We're happy to do that. And we'll see where we can be of most support to you.
Are you aware of any similar groups to yourselves where they've actually created a venture capital fund? Because it's always sort of been interesting to me whether, you could raise a few $1,000,000 from wealthy individuals in southeastern Connecticut on the basis that it goes into startups in southeastern Connecticut. And then obviously probably a little bit different to your lending arm or the selling to the government, where you've got to have a proven track record that it is much more of a high risk bet. But if it pays off, it might be mutually beneficial to both the local investors and a local company.
So absolutely, we're working with an organization called TechCon, which had some venture capital funds years back, invested them. Nothing came through, which is not unusual for venture. We're actually helping them apply for a grant, actually through EDA. It's called a Build to Scale grant to recapitalize their venture fund. It doesn't pay for the actual money to put into the fund, but it pays for the support to build that fund back up. So staff support, marketing efforts, education efforts, all of that. There is the Angel Investor Network throughout Connecticut, but they're very inactive in our region, but they are consulting to help TechCon with their project. But yeah, that is the one. Before she left Mitchell, Janet Steinmeier was very interested in starting a venture fund in our area. That was her background. But with her loss, that fizzled. When she moved back to Boston. But TechCon thinks they can do it. They just need the staffing support to be able to get their feet on the street, and especially with so many people of wealth moving into our region during COVID. Snapping up the shoreline properties. There's more opportunity than ever. In addition to those folks that are already here that just haven't been asked or haven't been educated as to how venture investing works, angel investing works.
So one more quick question. What can we do to help? Do you feel like local businesses in Stonington are well aware of capabilities? Not knowing what your capacity might look like, you might not want to be too aggressive in advertising right now. I don't know, but how might we be able to help you guys?
I'll take a first clone Dave. So that we can have more of him on our board and in our economic development committee.
We've been working on
but definitely,
a couple of things went awry, so we had to bail on it. But we're still.
But I would say definitely refer. Our website. We'll send you this slide with all the contact information on it. But the slide deck. But our website is www.sector.org. Our generic email is sector@sector.org. There is no wrong door. So refer somebody to us. And if we can't help them, we'll find somebody who does. What I forgot to mention is that about 50% of the business we do is actually referring people to people that can help them better. SCORE, SBDC, WBDC, a different lending partner that might have better credit terms than we do. And our terms are really very attractive, but sometimes Farm Credit East would be better, or a small CDFI grant would be better. So just refer, and we're happy to do this type of thing for businesses. So one of the things we've done for towns before is put together forums for businesses with various regional partners to teach them about resources that are available to them. So if that's of interest, they can be tough because businesses sometimes just don't have the time to sit and listen to a forum. But refer, and if there's an opportunity to get in front of some businesses, we would be happy to anytime. Thank you for that question.
Well, I think your presentation was great, and I learned a lot. So I'm a bit embarrassed to say it's taken a long time to better understand what sector is doing. But thank you, that was great.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Love working with Stonington.
Nancy, could I add, this is Jim, just add one more question to your group. This is something I wasn't quite sure where to sneak in here, but, and I was actually having a conversation with Dave earlier this week, and we're looking at survey and planning type grants for some of the community development stuff we're trying to do. Specifically things like Riverwalk development, pedestrian bridge, so on and so forth, trying to, small amounts of funding, you know, maybe in the 10 to 20K range. Are there any quick hit type of grants that you've helped communities secure for this type of activity?
It's EDA grants are tied to job creation. So you know, a Riverwalk or something like that normally wouldn't be an EDA project. Now, what we have to find out is when this new EDA funding comes out, that's tourism and placemaking, could have some placemaking aspects. That might be an option. I'm sure you've talked to the Council of Governments with some of their community, you know, infrastructure grants. That would be a place I'd look at. I would potentially reach out to Joe Courtney's office to find out if there's anything that they know of federally that's coming down the pike. But usually we get involved more in the economic development tied grants, but we're happy to help you look. Just let us know what you're looking for, and we'll put the questions out.
Listening to the rest of the presentation, it didn't seem like the perfect fit, but I figured I'd ask.
You know, and we don't know until we don't know. I mean, the more we learn, what we love is the opportunity to participate in something like this, and we might learn, we might uncover something that we didn't know about that might be of benefit. So yeah, let us know. And Dave, I know you had mentioned this project. I think it was on your spreadsheet, but let us know specifically what you're looking for. And we can just get some feelers out and see what we can find out, you know, starting with the COG and, you know, branching out from there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, you know, we can put you in touch with the right people at Courtney's office that are just fantastic. Senator Murphy already has a great person that does the federal stuff. So Jim, follow up with that. Dave can help you. We really can point you in the right direction. We can't do it hands-on ourselves. Same kind of thing. We can point you to somebody that can.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're just getting our subcommittees up and running. So we talked about the Bronze Triangle Committee, the TC80, so-called TC80, the zone, and the Exit 90 gateway to Stonington, which could be dressed up considerably. And that has a tourism and jobs factor. So I think once that subcommittee has met once, and Kevin is the chair of that committee, and we'll start getting some steps together. And, you know, then we'll definitely be talking to you about where are some funding opportunities that we could maybe get something going on that. I know, Nancy, you had mentioned a highest and best use type study. So that could be something that could be done. And, you know, what Jim was referring to, and you guys, because you looked at our project list, you know, we have a lot of energy focused on downtown Pawcatuck, and is it tourism? You know, maybe, you know, there's certainly a lot of tourists passing through there to go to, say, Watch Hill. You know, it's a revitalization effort, really. So, I don't know if that would be more state level funding that, if available. There's the, the transit-oriented development type link, even if there's no TOD money per se available from the state right now. Those are some of the storylines. These are really public amenities and a revitalization effort that drives economic development locally. So that's what we would be hoping to gain from it. That's kind of the underlying storyline. If we create recreational amenities, water access, take advantage of the wild and scenic designation for the Pawcatuck River, which is a federal level designation, so that people can actually see the Pawcatuck River from downtown Pawcatuck. It's kind of hidden right now. So, those are the types of things. If we can get the right story together, maybe we can be talking to you guys, to Jim's point, about maybe there are some sources of funding that you can help point us to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think in your area, a lot of it points to, workforce housing, because, EB has specifically pointed out Pawcatuck as an area of great interest to its workers, in terms of purchasing property or renting. It's, like you said, it's close to the shoreline, it's affordable. So, is there a story to be told there in terms of enhancing the attractiveness of the area for the burgeoning workforce by virtue of water access, things like that. So let's see what comes down the pike, and we can determine if there are funding sources or stories that we can weave together to make funding sources attractive.
And just one more thing that might help is USDA just came out with a good rural community program that is, and some of the grants are specifically for what you're talking about, Dave. And you have a great story to tell where you did your Pawcatuck neighborhood conversations. You have all that data about how much everyone wants to access that river. So you have all that background. So I think USDA might be a good place to look right now.
Right. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me of that, Melinda. Melinda's our grants guru. She has a really great pulse on the grant world, and especially when it's tied to municipalities, because she's very tied to that world. So we rely on her heavily for that incredible expertise.
Well, I think a key takeaway from your visit tonight is anybody on the EDC, if they feel like, there's a way that sector could help, even if it's just as a sounding board, as one of your team mentioned, Nancy, any of us should take advantage of that. And it's a phone call or an email away.
Absolutely.
Very easy to stay connected to sector.
Yeah. And, we have a board member in Dave who keeps us on task too. And that's why we love to have board members who are municipal leaders, that, kind of keeps us honest in terms of our service provision. So we're very fortunate. And this team is really eager to help. So it's a very service-driven organization. So we look forward to being of more service to you.
Any other questions from anyone for the sector team? I'm not seeing any or hearing any, so I think at this point we will say thank you very much, guys, and we'll definitely stay in contact.
Great. We look forward to working with you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Okay, so I'll hang in for another 10 minutes and we can get started. So I feel like just to wrap up the sector presentation, Kevin, I think you were here for one they did a couple years ago, but I have to say that presentation's a lot tighter, a lot more descriptive than and Jim's nodding his head too, than what we've seen in the past. So, Nancy, she mentioned she's been the director for 4 years now. Sector was in a bit of a shambles before Nancy took the reins, and she's done a phenomenal job. I mean, that's a group, they're definitely underappreciated in the region. And part of it is this awkwardness we have where we have, 19 municipalities all heading in different directions, and there's no coordination at the regional level. And that's really that's kind of the top goal for sector is can we get to that level where we're looked upon as the regional economic development entity that people come to. So she's helping to move them in that direction. And Cullen asks a question about how we can help them. And so I think the way to help them is let's stay connected. Let's ask them questions. I'm sure, Colin, a lot of your question was how can we connect them to businesses that might be able to use their services too? But it's all part of that network of getting to know our businesses in our community, getting connected if they needed, for example, loans. The P-TECH one is interesting because, you know, while EB has a pretty good presence in the mill building, they already have all the knowledge they need. It's more, you know, are there companies, manufacturing companies in Stonington that do not currently contract with the government who could expand their business by doing so? If we know of any of those, you know, we would connect them to the P-TECH group in sector. So the next part of the agenda, and then Kevin's going to drive this so I can exit the meeting. And for the record, I wanted to welcome Bill Hobbs, just so that it's on the recording. So thanks for joining, Bill. And the next part of the agenda was the goal was to try to have each of those subcommittees, and we have 8, provide draft charters and present those tonight for, you know, discussion and comment. So Jim has sent around 2, I sent around 1, Kevin has sent around 1, and I mean, they all look pretty good. So, you know, maybe the comments won't be too difficult to move through, Kevin, when we get started. I guess before I leave, what I wanted to really leave with this group is we have at least $14,000 in our EDC budget to spend this year, ending June 30th. And we gave money back last year, and we were good, you know, good town citizens, but in doing that to help out. I think it'd be great if we used the money this year. And we have a lot of ideas in these subcommittee projects that could use some money. So if we accomplish one thing tonight, it would be to identify specific uses for that money and then vote on it so that we can allocate our budget. So Kevin, I think if we can get to the point where we have tonight, we have some good proposals that make sense and are fiscally, you know, make sense and support the projects, and we'll move them forward, and we can spend the money before the end of June. Let's get those voted on and approved so that we can move forward. It takes some time to spend money. So you know, we want to make, and especially, I know Jim and I had some, we were trying to spend $20,000 a little over a year ago to do some survey work on the abutment in Pawcatuck for the Riverwalk connection between Donahue Park and Route 1, and we just had trouble getting that project going, and finally the contractor backed out of it. So we want to avoid those types of situations and get pen to paper, but then also get the projects moving. So that would be my hope for you know, the main accomplishment tonight, as well as reviewing the charters. But from what I've seen, they all look really good. So Kevin, do you want to take it from here? And if you want to go down the list, any order that you
Dave, the
want.
only thing I was going to say is, do you want to talk about the Pawcatuck Streetscape project that you've been involved with before you go? I'm not sure whether, you know, for this one or for others, whether we even have an idea what we want to request money and how much for, but you know, let's you know, I certainly for my project, I think the goal for next meeting is to try to figure out how do we spend the money, but I don't know whether we're going to get. But anyway, we've got a request tonight, and we think it's sensible, and we can vote on that for sure. But it may be a stretch.
Right. So I've got, I sent out a charter for the Pawcatuck River Greenway / Streetscape, and we agreed we would combine those as sort of, you know, public access, pedestrian amenity within downtown Pawcatuck, part of the revitalization effort. So, you know, as almost everybody on the call remembers, we had attempted to get started with the Riverwalk and ran into a bit of a buzzsaw with some of the some folks in the public that felt like they had been left out, and so then COVID hit, and so we really had to stop our effort, and now we want to regroup and get going again. So the charter here is I list myself and Susan Cullen as the team leads. And so one of the first steps is going to be to sit down with Susan and kind of review the history, but then say, what is, given the lay of the land, if you will, and the public sentiment, what is the best path forward from a governance point of view? So how do we organize a subcommittee or team that can actually make this happen? As far as spending money, if I wanted to request some money, I think I'm going to, we have $20,000 that's approved. That was for that original survey work. And we also have some money approved for the streetscape work. So I think we have roughly $40,000 combined between the streetscape and the Riverwalk. So that's some money that could get some stuff done. What I'm going to do is, in talking with Jim, there can be some economies and some synergies realized by getting some of the survey/permitting work done by combining this project with Pedestrian Bridge with maybe Circus Lot waterfront. So, getting all the, sorry, I got a cat, getting all that task done at once. So when we get to Jim's project, maybe include that. But I think, Jim, we have like $40,000 in CIP money that we can use, and that doesn't actually go away. I mean, that doesn't go away in June 30th. That gets carried over.
I think, Dave, it's going to be how fast we have to act on it. For instance, the Circus Lot can only be surveyed when it's not full of greenery. Otherwise, the price goes way up. So we probably have about a month before, and they're going to have to get a survey team together and everything. So that one may have to lead the pack. But as far as the area along the river, the whole coastline really needs a survey. There's not really much out there. Talking to the guys at Chirenzia, they don't have a lot that's already done. So they have a few pieces, but there's a little bit that the town did when they put in Donahue Park. There's a little bit for when the prior sale of 34 West Broad Street went through a few years ago. But other than that, up on the coastline, there's really not a lot. So in order to get a lot of this stuff done, you really need to do that. It's not only the coastline boundary, because you have to define a boundary and edge. You also have to, if you're going to do a river walk, you're probably going to need to take some near boundary soundings, which is, if you do that all in one day, it's one guy in a boat going down the river with a GPS and a sounding equipment. If you do it in 4 pieces, it's 4 times, so there are some economies in that.
So maybe, Kevin, what we can do is look at how the 40,000, the 20 and the 20 can be used to support this particular charter effort, this particular project, and the operational budget we have can be used to support other work.
Yep. Okay. And then maybe do we have to look at the details of, are there restrictions on what's defined as would come under the banner of the capital of the SIP, which some of this stuff around, I'll call it maybe more like expense of surveying and other things. Is that included, or is that something which we should be looking at taking it over our own budget? But maybe we don't need to worry about that now. We need to get some quotes, and then from that we can move forward.
Yeah. So
David.
what I would. Sorry, Jim, I'll just go first. But what I would do is consult with Jim Sullivan and just say, here's what we said we would do. The 20,000 we have for the Riverwalk was earmarked for surveying and permitting. So if we do that, if we use it for that, we shouldn't have to do anything. If we said we want to use that for, some other purpose, lighting or something, then we would have to go back to the Board of Finance and you'll probably, I think, I would check with Jim first, but I think we would have to go and then, because they would say whether or not they think that's a good use of the money. But Jim, what were you going to say?
Well, I think we had 40,000 for Riverwalk for streetscape. Then 20,000 of that we had to go to the Board of Finance. If I remember the history of this, we had to go ask them to move half of it laterally so we could get that survey done. And the survey guy backed out. The coastal survey guy backed out. So right now, as it stands in the budget, I believe in the SIP budget, we have 20,000 for streetscape and 20,000 for Riverwalk planning and survey. So
Right.
if we strayed for instance, I don't think we could use that for surface lots. I think we would have to, without going to the Board of Finance and say, hey, can you slide over, whatever the monies are to do that. So I think we would have to ask BOF for that, I think.
Yeah, we would. We'd have to ask for that money to be reallocated for that purpose, I believe. But
So I guess before you go, is there any financial requests that you're making on behalf of the Pawcatuck Streetscape / Riverwalk project?
no, nothing further than what's already been earmarked. I think the challenge would be the other way. If we want to use it for more than what it's already designated for, I'd have to go before Board of Finance and ask for permission to do that. So I think we're covered as far as the Riverwalk money goes. The streetscape money.
So Dave, I do have a question, or actually it's a comment. If we could does the town have a copy of the CIP policy where they delineate what is part of a CIP investment? Some towns have it, some towns don't.
Yeah, good question. I've never seen it if there is one, but I could try Googling on the town website and see if there is such a thing, or else I can ask Jim Sullivan, but yeah, good question, John.
It's after finding out a little bit about their spending procedures or lack thereof last year, I would be very surprised if there's a formal policy that eliminates a cap spend from an expense spend. Because there does seem to be a lot of miscibility in the way the budget is implemented each year.
I also think it's about how the accounting principles are applied at the town level as well. Just to confirm though, Dave, when you have to get a reallocation, what you're asking the Board of Finance to do is do a reappropriation, correct?
That could be the correct term. You're right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna buzz off.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so let's move on to the next project. Jim, do you want to talk about the pedestrian bridge?
Yes, but I do not have the ability with the device I'm using to put it up on screen. Perhaps can you do that from where you're sitting, Kev?
So unfortunately, I'm on an iPad and I've got my desktop
So am I.
set up. So no, but hopefully everyone, it came out this afternoon, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to.
This is the pedestrian bridge one?
Yes.
You're talking about? Yeah. Okay, yep, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, pedestrian bridge. Team members, Dave, Virginia, Pete, Chris, Kevin, and Suzanne Lane. Mission statement. I'm just going to read it because not everybody probably has it. Development of a master plan to design and implement a pedestrian bridge in the Pawcatuck Bridge District that satisfies the goals of multiple community constituencies. Identify and remove barriers to implementation. Goals and objectives. First goal, secure commitment for landing points of bridge on both sides of the river. Without that, there is no project. So I would
and that's probably the big kahuna, isn't it, Jim? Like, is it? Because it's not just technically; it's probably DEP. It's the property owners.
Sure.
So it may take a long time.
Well, I mean, it's a private property connection. So the first thing you got to do is get the private property guys to say yes. Without that, it's a non-starter. That being said, I believe that won't be a problem. I believe the other things will be more challenging. Second goal, create a functional bridge design that is affordable yet meets transportation objectives. 3, secure commitments of support from key local constituencies, which should be the most interesting part of the project, I think, as other constituencies have tried this project over decades. And the stretch goal, identify funding sources that align with implementation objectives, which may not be that hard. It just depends on what the budget is. My sense is this is not as expensive as people think, so or have thought in the past. I'm not going to go through the POCD alignment, but it's substantial. And the action steps, I'll just buzz through them quickly. Identification, team working familiarity with implementation sites. So basically it's getting the team down there to see the area we're talking about. Identification of landing points, identify a budgetary design partner, basically somebody who does bridges and somebody we can work with to do a kind of a budgetary number for it and a rough design. Identify survey requirements and a performance survey near the river's edge. For instance, you have to decide if you're going to build at river level or if you're going to walk up and go above floodplain and make sure that bridge stays out of the floodplain. It's two different ways you can do that. Create a rough bridge design, work with key local nonprofit organizations for buy-in, identify and engage all permitting authorities, and identify funding sources for bridge. And I put in a budget resource request. It's a straw man, but 35,000 I think would accomplish planning and survey work for this.
Okay, so the 35,000 is just your best guess for the surveying costs, the professional work to be required to build. Okay.
Yeah, bridge design. Yeah, all that.
Okay, but right now, you don't really have a request for funds because until one can be sorted out, which is where it's going from, then we don't really know what you're surveying or other things. So, but anyway, I suppose that's the question: is there any immediate funding requests that make sense right now, or do we really need to wait another month or two before? And again, we've got 3 months to spend this money, and providing we're committed and we've got a quote, the work could actually occur sort of, maybe, even in July, but if we've got a contract in place that.
Right. Only to the extent, only perform the survey work on the Stonington side to the extent that the greenway would go along the same pathway of where the bridge abutment on the Stonington side would be. That would be the only reason to do it sooner.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Jim on the Pedestrian Bridge project? And Jim, I think your charter looks great. But I think you're being ambitious with a 4/21 date for knowing what from where it's going between and to.
We'll see how it goes.
That's great. Yeah. No, again, I'm not even familiar with the site, so I'd be interested just to have a walk around there and see what we think. Okay. Next project is the Mechanic Street Mills, which has got Jim's name on it. Richard's name on it. He's not here, so we'll skip over that. We talked about the Pawcatuck River streetscape and the Greenway with Dave. The bridge we've done. Stuck property analysis. Cullen, I assume nothing there yet on your side for it.
No, I sent it to Dave. I just didn't send it out broadly.
Okay.
Here, I can go here.
Maybe just if you probably email it and then, or you can even just talk us through it.
Yeah. So you've got John, Kevin, Jim, Rich.
Oh, look at that.
Pete, Dave, Suzanne, Chris. Identify, research, and analyze historically stuck properties and develop and execute an action plan based on those findings towards supporting greater productivity. And really, it's, I think, complete a comprehensive assessment and findings on the stuck properties and then develop an action plan based on those findings. So I didn't get too creative on the dates here. My thought is, I'm not really sure what zone, obviously I think I at least had done some work looking at exit 92, but wanted to sort of break the town up into a few zones and people could kind of, identify which ones they would. I think it's probably like, what a stuck property is when you see it, right? So we could break them up and people could, drive around, take pictures, so that's basically number 2, identify and document some of the stuck properties, and then a month in there for actually performing outreach to real estate agents, owners, etc., to understand the history and challenges, and then basically 2 months to bring all of those different findings together and make recommendations and then back presumably to this group to start sharing those findings and recommendations.
Colin, I think that sounds good. I'd be happy to volunteer for looking after the TC80. And if you want to broaden that, like maybe do TC80 all the way through Old Mystic.
Yep.
And then between Rich and Jim, they've probably got a pretty good handle for all of the mill areas in Puckatuck.
Yep.
And I suppose the question is, do we care about anything in Mystic, as in, you know, almost the downtown areas? Stonington Borough, I wouldn't even put on the list.
The one question I do have about the borough, though, is that one house that looks like it's going to be like it. I'm assuming it's condemned at this point. I don't know if you guys know the one I'm talking about. It's like
Which one are you talking about?
As you're walking down the hill on your way to like Milagro on your right.
On the right-hand side, yeah. So
Yeah.
The Leaning Tower of Stonington.
Yes.
I mean, that guy, he's the guy who owns Universal Package Store. I think he's sort of basically does everything for cash rather than lending money. He's just sold his house, which is for quite a bit of money. So I'm hoping that maybe he's got some cash and we'll sort of see some movement on it. But again, if you, I'm happy. Actually, tell you what, I'll do Stonington and I'll figure out from the real estate agents there whether they think it's whether it's an issue with money. Even though I think I'm actually on planning and zoning for Stonington Borough, and I think I heard from the zoning guy that basically he's got the approvals to do structural repair work, and he sort of started, and then all of the work stops. I don't think it's a zoning or permissioning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of assumed Borough and Mystic were kind of less probably.
Yeah,
part of this.
I agree. Yeah.
So it sounds like maybe we've already hit our 3/31 date then.
But I tell you what, do you want to just formalize it and send us emails and tell us who you want to look after, which areas, and maybe, yeah. But one of the things which I did for mine is to, and actually the 331 would work, is have deadlines, which is a few days before the next EDC meeting, so you can actually update your charter and say what you've done and what you haven't done.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll update these to align with actual meeting dates.
Colin, just a thought on scope. I mean, I can think of outliers in Mystic. I can think of outliers in Old Mystic. I mean, by definition, stuck properties are outliers. They're going to exist in all the villages of Stonington. So, I mean, if you think about some of the old hotels or motels that have been stuck for a number of years in Mystic, you know, there's just lots of stuff there. And so, I think scraping that stuff up and getting it onto one spreadsheet has value just in and of itself.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I might, and I've driven around Pawcatuck a lot more than I've driven around Mystic, so I'm less aware. But yeah, I think you're right.
And Colin, let me know what you want me to do to help you.
No, that's great. I'll break it up into some zones. Maybe there's like 4 or 5 of us here, so I'll break it up into zones, and then I'll figure out. I don't know if I mean, in a corporate world, we'd have like a Microsoft Teams site, and we could all do document share or something. So it might be, I establish a template and everybody can fill it in, and then I can aggregate things together after that.
So Colin, we do have an EDC Google Docs, and you could create I'm sure I just updated it so everybody's got access. So you could create a folder there for your project, and within that we could maybe have a shared spreadsheet, and you can tell us what to do.
And one other comment is we might want to leverage the assessor. My guess is the assessor has a list of properties that are problems for them, whether the taxes aren't being paid, taxes are behind. I'm sure they're very familiar where all the skeletons are in the town.
Has anybody met or talked to or communicated with the new tax assessor?
Try to avoid that kind of conversation.
Yeah, I haven't, but I think that John's right. And I had a good Marsha, the old one, was great, and she'd sort of give us any information.
Great resource.
I was going to approach her to get a listing of all of the owners of the TC80 documents. So, Colin, if you want, I could ask her if she's got some list of properties which they see as problematic.
Sounds great.
And I'm also wondering, I think that some of the real estate agents will have actually maybe more the commercial side.
Yeah.
So even though you've got that as step 4 or step 5, that some of them might actually be able to fast track it and say, here's some other things which we've been trying to offload or there's no appetite for years. Okay, so I'll ask the tax assessor for stuck properties as well as TC80. I'll also share the link to everybody again for Google Docs, just so there's a whole stack of historical stuff there, but you can create your own folders and then send links to your team members and work that way.
I'd say, Kevin, if you have specific people, you mentioned sort of commercial real estate, anything that you have, I mean, I'm happy to chase them down, call them.
Yeah, and honestly, there's only about 2 or 3,
okay.
and they basically cover everything in southeastern Connecticut. So, yeah, so how about if I get, there's like, and there you see them on, there's US properties, you see their billboards around it. Paul, Susan, or Connie, and there's 2, and then there's another guy from Pequot Commercial that I'll give you. They'll find their contact details and. Okay.
Cool.
Great. Okay, and then the only other one was the TC80 project. See if I can find.
Circus lot 2.
Oh, there we go. Yes. Sorry, Jim. Let's do the circus lot and the Darl Oil project.
Yep. So this one I'm gonna do a little differently. It's a little longer, but basically the goal is acquiring the circus lot from Westerly while minimizing town risk and deciding how far we want to go down that continuum in terms of phase 2 studies and surveys and things like that. Developing a recreational use plan for at least some portion of the 6 acres, and to try to find, most importantly, try to find some public-private synergy between that land and the potential development of the 2 acres that abut Route 2, which are owned by, ironically, the same guy that owns the Dunkin' Donuts, or hopefully a Dunkin' Donuts site that'll happen on Route 1 on South Broad Street. So that's the old Best Eaten site. So it's the same guy, which Dave pointed out a few months ago. His name's
Did he also own the Mystic Dunkin' that closed?
One that closed, right? So he's pretty hot to open up a site on Route 1. He closed that because the lease didn't work out for the type of Dunkin' that it was there, and he's looking to develop that site that he's owned for a decade. That's been held back by drive-through regulations. So it looks like something broke on that. By the way, this is a little off course, but I think Ted Ladwig is going to be putting something before the PZC pretty soon here to try to get that site approved. So looks like there's been a little crack in the little crack in the arbor there. So hopefully that'll happen. Really quick on this, determine future environmental needs, conceptual discussions with Dahl owner to try to find out what his vision for that site is and how that could dovetail with the development of the circus lot for some other uses. Hosting community conversations would be part of this. Introducing it to introduce a concept to PZC. Basically, the idea is to see how creative we could get with a public-private partnership on this. I think that's the way I'd like to take this subcommittee project as far as it can go, to see if there can be some synergy, because you have everything here. You have river access. You have some parts of the property that could be developed with buildings. You have some parts of the property that could not, based on topography. So it's a pretty interesting project, and we have a very engaged owner of the lots on Liberty Street. He's definitely wants to do something with that, and has a track record of commercial development that's pretty impressive. So let's see what happens. It's not just Dunkin' Donuts, guys. It's mixed use developments. It's stuff all over the place. So he's a pretty experienced developer.
Jim, I said the question I've got is, why not do your step number 2 first, which is basically come up with the plan of how these 2 properties could be used.
I think that's that is, when you look at the dates, they're almost concurrent on the sheet. So that's going to happen. It's just a matter of if the town has to take title this at any point, and they're going to have to take title first, even if they were to take, let's say, a small portion of stuff. So the town has to understand when they get this property, what risk they have. You know, has it been environmentally contaminated? Was it before they sold it to Westerly? Was it contaminated by Westerly before it came back? Because there are certain state laws that kick in there. So it's just a matter of how much risk is the town wants to take with this.
And the town, does the town have to take that risk, or if you had a deal lined up, could the property be passed directly, say straight through to the guy who owns the Dale Oil lot, and he takes
it certainly could be. However, I think that the area near the river is probably too wet to be developed. And the town probably politically would want, I can't imagine they would want to just, if they just took a big piece of public land and just sold the entirety without any public water access or anything, I can't imagine that would go over great. So we'd have to talk about it. I mean, but there is a possibility that a portion could be done that way. I would tend to doubt the whole lot could be done that way, or whether the town will want to, because they may want to retain that water access.
And would you envisage that the entire circus lot is maintained for recreational use?
My opinion on that is that it's not the highest and best use of the site. I think the highest, my personal opinion is that the highest and best use of the site is commercial, close to Liberty Street, backed as you start going downgrade towards the river, flanked by residential behind it, flanked by a public use park behind that has river access for the general public. I think that, to me, that is a win-win-win situation. Win for the taxpayer, win for the tax base, win for the developer, and then in great public access, it could be complete with, you know, really good water access. So I think that would be the holy grail if we could pull that off, and that's the idea.
Yeah. And I suppose the reason why I asked that question is because maybe a year or 2 years ago when we were meeting with Deb Downey, you know, she said, "Oh, listen, I wouldn't recommend that we spend any more money on environmental studies until we knew what the use was going to be. Because if it was going to be recreation, then she said, honestly, I think you've probably already done enough work. But if it's going to be this or it's going to be that, then it becomes more complicated the more you're going to do on it, where you're going to do on it. So yeah, so you are being ambitious, but that's actually good. So
yeah."
Hey, Jim.
Yes.
I got a question. So you're basically describing a mixed use, obviously with open space component. Do you think that's what the lender would require, the mixed use component? Or would you think they'd be willing in today's environment to do either multifamily or just office or something like that, or they prefer mixed use? I'm just curious.
When I say mixed use, I meant for the lot in its entirety, meaning a commercial building fronting Route 2, flanked by dedicated multi-occupant residential buildings behind it, not one building with both in it.
No, I understand. I'm sorry. Maybe the wrong characterization, but you're saying one property, multiple types of real estate components on that property. That's probably the better way to define it.
I think the lender would probably want to see high density residential. That's a lot easier. But,
yeah, it is. It is, but the returns aren't always there for the developer.
Right, but I think for the town, you know, the PV5 zone, the intent of the PV5 zone is village style commercial development right up on Route 2, and you really have an opportunity to do that. You have considerable frontage there. I don't have the figure in front of me, but it's hundreds of feet. And then you have the access to the back lot. You have a second access on the back of Noyes Avenue. Like I said, it's an interesting project. All you have to do is look at a top level picture of it and where the river falls in. And I would say that 95% of the town of Stonington doesn't even know that lot exists.
Yeah.
Doesn't even know where it is.
So you know what's interesting is I hope you're all on the distribution list for the newsletter, which we send out towards the beginning of the month. And in this past newsletter, we had the story of what the EDC priorities were, and there's the thing about the Mystic Boat having a couple of other things, and then Thomas did a poll at the bottom and said, tell us which of these EDC projects you think is important. So we didn't give them an opportunity to say, I don't like this or you shouldn't be doing it. And I was surprised by how many people mentioned that the circus lot and these opportunities in Pukatuck were things which they would support. So he wanted to wait a week or so, and then he was going to summarize all of the poll results, and then we can send it out to you. But I thought, my God, like this is stuff that most people don't know either. But I think maybe there's a few more people who, and there are people whose names I did not know.
I think that's a benefit if that's the case. I think there's more of an appetite for development in Pawcatuck than there is in the other villages. So, or large scale development, I guess, to be specific. So there wasn't much opposition to what Wind Group wanted to do. So can't imagine there'd be, if you add a public access component to this and something desirable from a commercial, I can't imagine that's worse. So we saw that was very little resistance with wind.
Yeah. So Jim, is there enough land there that maybe what happens is it gets subdivided into separate parcels?
Yeah, it might. I think that's, if there's a public access component to it, that's likely going to happen. I mean, where the town would retain the area that's the public access portion, and there has to be the thing that the circus lot has is the acreage. It has almost 6 acres. What Bruce Thomas owns is 2 acres. What he has is the frontage. So there's a real potential for something special here if we can get everybody on the same page.
Yeah. Okay. Bill Hobbs, have you got any perspective or view on this, as you've certainly been instrumental in cleaning up the circus lot?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, not really. I have a question that's unrelated and pertains to the main thoroughfare over the river. And I think it was back in the fall, we heard a presentation and saw some artistic concepts of a gateway over that bridge that I thought was pretty attractive looking. And my question is, does anybody know what's happened to those concepts? Is that dead in the water, or is that an ongoing project?
Bill, I think I can answer a little bit of that. The Chamber of Commerce, the Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce, sponsored a competition for this to dress up the bridge. And I think that bridge is slated for replacement in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's when that would be implemented. So I think it was just getting an idea of conceptual design. I don't think that would be implemented without replacement of the bridge. You look at the maintenance is being deferred on that bridge, right? All you have to do is look at it from downriver, and you can see that they're not really doing much with it. So on that bridge, the bridge was put in, I believe, in 1932. So it's 90 years old. So it's getting there.
I know they want to widen that bridge.
Oh man, that's gonna be a nice project.
Yeah. Jim, is there any funding request that you think makes sense to spend on the Circus Lot Dale Oil Lot project now?
Yes. Two requests. I would ask for $6,000 for site survey work and $1,000 for conceptual drawings. I think those two things are. It's probably one of our number one projects in terms of implementation. It's been on the dial for a few years now, and I believe we can get the survey work done for $6,000, and the $1,000 for conceptuals would get us something. So I'm going to ask that that be put to a vote tonight.
So Jim, tell us, what do we get for what does the site survey give us?
That gives us boundaries and topography. It's the baseline for development. There is no good survey for this site. The last survey for this site was done in the 70s, and nobody can find it.
Saying for Dal Oil or for Circus Lot or for both?
Well, the deed, as it's described right now, shows a circuit lot as a sub parcel of what was formerly the Dahl Holding, which was all of these sites, both what Mr. Thomas owns and what the circus lot is. So I guess I'm guessing the original one probably had both, but that's a guess. Okay, it may, there must have had to have been some deed work done at that point, but it's been a long time. It's been almost, it's been in the 45, 50 year range. It's certainly not CAD. But getting a good survey on this is really, before you do anything, you got to get a survey. If you're going to ask a architect to ever do a conceptual on this, he's going to need a survey to.
Okay, that was going to be my question is could we do the conceptual drawings without having the site survey done?
Yes, you could, but it would be better to have a survey.
Now, the $1,000 for the conceptual drawing seems like not enough. How much did we pay Frank Azanaro for the Campbell Grain stuff?
I'm not
and
talking
wouldn't
about
this be?
I'm talking about a graphic drawing, not an architectural drawing.
I see. And when you say graphic, so excuse my ignorance, are you talking about just basically what the topology, not coming up with some designs or how it could be, how the property itself could be used for different things?
I'm talking about an artist rendition, not a architecturally accurate drawing with maps.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So Frank did, his were more like it had somewhat, it did think about parking and roads and heights and stuff like that. Okay. So you would look at so you would look at saying, I want to put some commercial building on Liberty Street, and then behind that maybe some residential, and then behind that there's a nice walkway that goes down across the river.
Right, and get it from the correct angle where people can see perspective and how everything lines up.
Yeah. Okay, but $1,000.
We actually did that for Riverwalk. Remember we commissioned the art for that?
Yeah.
That only cost a few $100s. It wasn't a big
Okay. Yeah.
And that was really, I thought we got a lot of bang for the buck with that.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose the 6,000 seems like a lot of money now, but also
for
it doesn't
survey,
seem,
not so much.
No, but it's not, is it an A2 survey or is it just what it is? Okay. So should, I think doesn't it make sense that the dull oilite should be included in the survey? But if we're going to do that, then shouldn't there be some sort of agreement with the owner that he would contribute something towards the cost of doing the survey?
The ask for this is already taking that into account.
Oh, okay. So you think it'd be 6,000 for the circus lot only, on the condition that the owner of the Dale Oilite also has the same surveyor work, and we get basically a survey of the entire combined properties.
The owner of the Dale lot has agreed in principle to already fund part of the survey, which is greater than $6,000. I imagine he'd get his own surveyed at the same time, but that would probably be a separate contract. So we're getting a great deal for a survey that's double that. We're going to be able to get it for $6,000.
And have you spoken to anybody to know that the 6 number is a good number, or is it that's the top of the range? That would be the top. That
would be the top of the range. I have not gotten competitive quotes on it.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, where exactly is the Dahl lot when you look at what's projected on the screen here? Where is it?
Bill?
Okay, the
I
Dahl
see
lot.
So it's right above
Right there.
Seawell, right here.
Right there.
Right above Seawell, yeah. Right in the front.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's high ground, isn't it?
It's the highest ground. Yes, it would be the highest ground on the site. Everything slopes back towards the river, which is it gradually, but it does.
Yeah, and down below there, it's all wetland. Remember, we couldn't get in there to clean up some of the trash.
Right. That is the area closer to really on the other side of the pump station, which you can see there.
Right. Yeah.
But the area in between here, that's the area that's a little bit, and there's also a huge slope coming off the railroad tracks, which you kind of see in the drawing, but it's kind of hard.
Right.
You can see it.
Okay.
So
you can really see how critical Dahl oil is too, right? There's otherwise the access to the circus lot is, via the back of this residential area, which is really pretty terrible for it.
And I can't imagine we'd ever get community support to have any public access at the end of that street there. So it has to really come from Liberty Street. And then I think it's a win. And maybe you can connect the two so people could walk down one end and come out another. But I think without the Dahl oil lot, this doesn't, this doesn't go anywhere.
Right. So again, this topography shows it very well. You can't really see it from the road. That's why a lot of people, maybe not as many as we thought, but a lot of people still don't even know that this lot is here. So, but it's yeah. So I would the other thing you got to remember about this survey is the survey quotes, at least the survey quote that I've gotten, is only valid when there's not green. If the site gets overgrown, they're going to wait to survey it till the late fall. So we're going to lose a season if we don't fund it now, and it's going or it's going to cost a lot more. So the quotes we got, which were back in January of 2020, and I called to find and I am assured that they are still valid because their rates haven't changed. And it was Sharenzia for this one. Yeah, one of the provisions is it's done without the site being overgrown, which it will get overgrown in the spring, and that'll stay that way in the summer. And Bill's very familiar with how brushy that site is. So.
Okay, so Jim, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve $6,000 up to $6,000 in funding for specific to site survey work on the circus lot, and another $1,000 up to $1,000 of funding for conceptual artistic renditions, not architectural, artistic, because architectural would be 10 times that.
Okay, do we want to add a provision that is on the basis that the owner of the Dahl oil, well, I would like to add a condition that it's on the basis that the owner of the Dahl oil lot agrees to do a similar, to survey his lot.
If it doesn't exist already, sure.
At his cost. Because without there's no point doing it unless we can get both properties done at the same time.
All right, sounds good. And actually, combining those on one survey wouldn't be the worst thing in the world anyway. And that is a far easier site to survey. It's cleared for the most part. It's got known boundaries. That would be a very inexpensive ad, I would imagine. I will talk to Sharenzia about it.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we'll have Bill second it. Any further questions or issues or concerns from people? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Okay, wonderful. Passed. Okay, so we were able to agree on a step forward, and that's good, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so I think the only one which we didn't talk about then was the TC80 project. And from the charter there, what we agreed was that the next thing we should do is we should actually create a vision for what we want to be in this TC area. So TC just stands for tourist commercial, but we think that there's an opportunity to have it be more than just a tourist commercial centre. And that there's opportunities for residents of Stonington to participate in activities more there. There's probably a potential to have residences there as well. And in the back of my mind, I think, well, why wouldn't it potentially be maybe something for affordable housing? Also, it's on septic. It's got all the utilities. So if we could create. So our next step is basically create a vision by talking to some of the property owners, by the other planners, the chambers of commerce. And once we agree what the vision should be for the next 25 years, then we can come back to, okay, what is it? What would we need to change, probably from a zoning perspective, to have that happen? We think we could probably do some architectural drawings as well, if it's going to include a gateway. But at the moment, there's no request for any money because we don't know exactly what it is that we want to achieve. And one somewhat exciting thing that came up after the meeting was that the landscape architect students from UConn have actually been continuing to work on a project in this area, and they're doing two things. One is trail work, and the trails include some existing trails with Coogan Farm, but they're also looking at leveraging the Eversource. So there's a huge stack of big power lines which cut through this in many different directions, and there's a possibility that trails could be incorporated into that Eversource controlled properties. And they are also, I think, doing some landscaping work back with the underpass. I'm not too sure whether it's what actually includes, but that work is likely to happen over the next. They've only got another couple of months, I think, of their school year. So if we can try to get our act together and get involved with what they're doing, maybe we can direct it a little bit more towards whatever the vision is that we come up with. So I guess ideally we'll try to have a meeting in the next couple of weeks with the team to agree what we would like the vision to be of this particular part of town. Does anybody have any suggestions or questions on the charter DC80 Gateway project? Okay. So let me just go back to the agenda to see whether, so the other two projects, the comprehensive zoning update and the housing strategy, are both being driven by the Department of Planning, so nothing else on our list. Let's have a quick look at the agenda to see if everything we've...
Hey, Kevin?
Yes.
Does Dave want us to actually vote on accepting these charters or not?
I was just checking the... So it's not on the agenda. I think I don't think it's probably necessarily something we have to have a vote on. It was more to each meeting we'll discuss them and give feedback. But I think we can work on the basis that all of the charters, pretty much as written, look pretty good, and we'll keep working away on them. Okay, is there any other items that people want to raise or discuss before we adjourn the meeting?
I sent, Kevin, I sent you and Dave a copy of the CIP policy.
Thank you.
I found it. It's pretty generic.
Okay, so if nobody else has anything to add, then I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 45.
A second.
I second.
Give Jim the second on that one. And all in favour? Aye. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Aye.
Take care, guys.
Aye.
Have a great evening.
Good
Take
night.
care, Virginia.
Good night.
And April.
Good night.